Most sales reps in the online space get to a stage where they're making 10K a month, 15K a month, but they never actually learn sales. See, what gets you to that point is you learning a script, you knowing word tracks. The salespeople who've got to a stage where they're making 50, 60, 70K a month consistently are the ones who learn how to think on calls rather than what to say. At the ripe age of 22 years old, I was able to go failed athlete to commissioned sales rep making over $100,000 a month consistently every single month as a high ticket sales rep. In the span of 1.5 years, I did over 10 million in sales. I got to that stage by just knowing how to think on sales calls and really understanding buyer psychology, really understanding how people think and what triggers them to actually buy things. Whether you've been in sales for 6 months, 6 years, this video is gonna give you the solid foundation as to what you actually need to understand while you're on calls to get to a stage where you're making, 40, 50, 60K a month consistently. Now, obviously the offer itself that you're on is important to that. And I'm a big believer, if you want to have value as a sales rep, you have to be able to get to a stage where you're closing deals that not many people could actually close. The way most people want to think about sales is like persuasion, manipulation, all these different sort of mind games, convincing people. I'm actually a big believer that sales is a lot more simple than what you actually think. Now, a lot of people want to get to a stage where you get on calls, you have a specific script, you're following a script, and that script is your crutch. Sales, what it actually is, you're literally just talking to another human being. Now, what separated me from most salespeople when I was, closing and when I was at the height of my career was I didn't sound like a closer. I didn't sound like a salesperson. I sounded like a human being talking to another human being. I'm a big believer in B to H sales, business to human. You're talking to another human being, so sound like it. While you're talking to another human being, the way you need to frame yourself is you need to be like a human lie detector on a sales call. Because most people get on calls with you and they'll just lie out of their teeth. What they do is they take these lies and they actually feed into these lies. They buy into these lies. The way I like to think about sales is I'm actually a human lie detector. I'm getting on these calls and I'm looking for different inconsistencies, different languages, social cues, just different things that just don't align, that don't make sense. And I'm gonna call this person out for whatever they say that just does not make any sense. And when you get on a call with a frame that you're like a human lie detector and your sole job on a sales call is to get to the truth, that's when every single call you take will be much more efficient, will sound way more real, and it will just be way better for your pockets. You'll just start making way more commissions because once you start getting to the truth as to why somebody's not where they wanna be in their life, that's when you have the most leverage in a sales call. Because the thing about it is most salespeople, they wanna beat around the bush. They wanna get on calls, speak to people, and just be fake. It's like, yeah, man, you're not where you wanna be, and that's okay. Yeah, you definitely got scammed in the past. You definitely, it's definitely all these external factors that held you back. There's nothing within yourself. People want to feed into those lies. The biggest thing that I did that allowed me to go from a good level to a great level is just getting on calls and just getting to the truth as fast and as efficiently as possible. Everything else after that is secondary, right? The first thing that you need to prioritize in sales, getting to the truth. However, a lot of you can't do that. Not because you don't want to, it's because you're too attached to the sale itself. And that's why you can't get to the truth, because once you're too attached to the sale, you can't get to the truth. And that leads me to my second point, which is the biggest mistake that closers make and the most expensive one that costs you the most amount of money is just attachment to the outcome. And I mentioned this in my last video, one of my core principles is just being fully detached. And not like you don't care about, this person or you don't care about the call itself. It's just you not caring about actually making the money that you have potential for on that call. When you get to the stage where you're so detached from the outcome, getting to the truth is 10 times easier. Questions you ask are harder, there's more friction on calls, you're able to ask more direct questions, and you're able to be more real with people. And people buy into that kind of frame. People buy into the fact that you're a real person talking to another real person and just helping them get to the best decision they can to actually get the outcome they want in their life. Before you learn any sort of tactics, what a lot of you need to do is obviously unlearn all the shit that you've learned in this space about what people tell you how to sell and all these. And most of the people that have taught you how to sell, fundamentals is detachment, right? And once you are in a stage of detachment, you have to understand how a call is supposed to flow. Now, the biggest thing that served me in my sales career was having a mental framework. So knowing where a conversation needs to go instead of thinking about what to say. And the thing that I always thought about when I was on calls was I always used to think there's 3 W's that I want to check off in a discovery, okay? Why change? Why change now? Why this vehicle? Now, the questions you ask to get those 3 outcomes are going to always be different for different avatars you're speaking to. So you always have to understand who you're speaking to on sales calls. The avatar that you speak to is always going to be different. So you have to ask questions differently, questions to different avatars to actually get why change now, why this vehicle. And once you understand the 3 W's, you want to get clarity as to what's stopping them from actually getting to where they want to get to. What's held them back? Why haven't they changed? Why haven't they taken action to get the outcome they're looking in life? Once you're able to get clarity on those 3 W's and understand what's held them back, you have a lot of leverage on calls. The 3 W mental framework is going to help you a lot. However, it's not always going to get you what you want. And the biggest thing about sales is knowing when to move on instead of when to keep probing. So for example, a lot of you, what you do on sales calls is you ask a question, you get a very surface level answer, and you want to move on. Well, you don't want to, but you feel the need to. You just move on, right? You don't actually probe deeper. You don't get an actual plausible reason. I always say on calls, if it does not make sense to you, call it out, okay? Call it out or question them. If it makes sense, you move on. What you want to do, and the best way I can describe it is, what you want to do on calls is you want to open the wound and let the person that you're speaking to be aware of that wound. They need to be aware of their current situation before you can get any sort of desired outcome on any sort of call. One of the best things that you can actually do on a call, which a lot of you don't do, is you want to use the power of leaning out. So John, like, speaking to you for the last 5-10 minutes, man, like, I still really don't understand why we're on this call, to be honest. Like, for me, it's really important to understand, like, the reason why you're here, because having no reason to start a business is not going to take you far. But having an actual reason to why you want to start a business is going to take you the furthest all the way. So for you, man, like, I'm still trying to understand why we're on this call. And almost just leaning out and questioning why they're there. And most of the time, whenever you lean out with somebody, it's just human psychology. They're going to lean back in. It's like you're the gatekeeper, right? Don't give this person any sort of room to walk all over you and just give you answers that don't make sense or that answers that you don't want to hear. Always make sure that you extract everything that you need on a call to move the needle forward. Over my career, I can't really remember a single time I had a discovery that went over 15 minutes. Okay, 15 minutes is like a long discovery for me, but most of you, what you guys are doing is you guys are getting on calls. You're sitting there with them for 30, 40 minutes and acting as a therapist, okay? This is why a lot of you can't close deals, and this is why a lot of you are gonna stay stuck for a long time, because you don't understand how important frame is on a call. And when you stay with somebody for 30, 40 minutes, it's like you don't even value your own time. It's like you're giving this person room to just walk all over you and just say whatever they want. I don't want a lean discovery just for the sake of having a lean discovery. You should have a lean discovery because every single question you ask actually serves a purpose in moving the needle forward on a call. So every single question you ask matters. What a lot of salespeople do is they ask filler questions. Filler questions, they want to fill space. They want to just say things for the sake of saying things, which in my opinion is very backwards. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? Because think about it, imagine you're on a call and imagine you're a prospect, right? And you're speaking to somebody who just sounds off and they're asking you like questions that just don't really make any sense. The sales resistance is just gonna go up through the roof. When you build a lot of sales resistance on calls, like it's hard to kind of come back from. You know, it's possible, but it's just hard and you're making your own life harder. So the reason I like to have the 3 W's, and it goes hand in hand with having a leaner discovery, is when you have the 3 W's in your head and you're able to mentally just understand when you've checked off each W, you're gonna get to a point where you're like, okay, I can move on now and I can pitch. And your discovery will be like 10 minutes and you have exactly what you need and you have the leverage. If you need to go past 15 minutes because you don't have leverage on a call, that's a whole different story, right? I'm with that. But a lot of you have some plausible information on calls, you have some sort of ammo, keep probing and keep circling around and you think that if you do this, you're gonna get to the call and you're gonna have an objection list closed. Sales does not work like that, okay? Always expect the unexpected. That's why my discoveries are so short, because I'm always aware that like sometimes no matter what you say on a call with somebody, they're just not gonna buy. They're gonna give you an objection regardless. Like I could get this person to cry and you'll still say I need to think about it. It's not how it works. Real salespeople understand the triggers psychologically that get somebody to actually give you their credit card rather than you thinking that you need to get somebody to cry to get them to pay. Identifying weak language on a sales call is gonna be one of the biggest assets that you have in your arsenal in terms of actually moving the needle forward, because what a lot of people do is they get on calls and the prospect they speak to is saying a lot of half in, half out language, a lot of weak language that does not show any sort of commitment whatsoever. So things like, I think I'd be interested, I'm kind of looking at making a change, or I guess it could work. These are all examples of weak language that a lot of you pass up on sales calls. They think that they can get on this call and waste your time. Whenever somebody gives me weak language, I always just call it out. And when you're not able to call out weak language, it just gives somebody full authority, full permission to walk all over you on a call. Either I address it, and it depends on the conversation you're having, but you either want to address it straight away or just keep it in the back of your head and kind of make a mental note and keep it in the mental vault and address it later on a sales call. You see how you just said like I think, or I would, or I might? Like, to me, it just doesn't sound like you're fully invested in actually getting the outcome that you're looking for in life. And I'm not here trying to say that you're not, that's just how it sounds, man. And when you can speak to somebody like that on a call, it just shows that you're just like, you don't give a fuck about the sale or not. And that's the frame that most of you need to take. And it all comes back to detachment. It's like, and the reason I'm able to say these things is I don't care if this person pays or not. And when I have that frame, when I sound like that on a sales call, people are a lot more open with you because they can feel that you just don't care. Like you're not another sales guy trying to take their money. It's gonna allow you to close a lot more deals. See, that's the single biggest key to closing more deals, is just getting those people who have been on sales calls before, who have natural resistance towards salespeople, to buy, because they buy from you, right? People buy from people. So, and the reason why a lot of you don't do this is because you're afraid to ruffle some feathers. You're afraid of not having friction on calls. And I always say this to people on my sales teams, that when there is no friction, the sale is lost. Make sure that you're able to create friction on a call, but don't just do it for no reason. Do it in a way where like you're doing it in their best interest. Like, this person that you're speaking to has a clear way of making decisions that's not serving them. Trying to do on the call is just get them to just understand and be aware that they're getting in their own way. People who give you a lot of weak language, sometimes they could be buyers, right? These are people that sometimes you can call them out and, you know, they could be aware that what they're saying is a core problem in terms of why they're not able to get to where they want to get to in their life. But I'm also a big believer that in sales, there's profiles of people you speak to, okay? And I like to categorize them in two different categories. There's buyers and there's tire kickers, okay? So a tire kicker is someone who, no matter what you say, no matter all the questions you ask, no matter how good you are at sales, this person was never going to buy. And what a lot of you aren't able to do is you're not able to identify who's a buyer and who's a tire kicker. Okay, and once you're able to get to a stage when you understand who's a buyer and who's a tire kicker, like you're gonna understand that you'll be able to close a lot more deals because you'll know when to give your energy to all the buyers. And when I'm speaking to tire kickers, like the biggest thing I do is I just like try to get off the call and try to get my energy back as soon as possible so I have the right sort of energy for the buyers. People who are strictly looking for information, a lot of you, what you try to do is you want to get this person through the entire sales process, and this person's literally told you 3 times, all I'm doing on this call is information gathering. I'm not looking to do anything for the next 6 months. And you still want to try to go through the entire, hour sales call with this person. And that's going to drain your energy. And what I like to do is with these people, I'm like, yeah, man, no worries. This call is not really just for information. Like, honestly, it's not going to serve you in the best way. If all you're looking for is information, man, I can just send you a bunch of free resources and you can get all the information that you need. And a lot of them are like, yeah, no worries, that works. You give them the information, you're off the call, they're off the call, and everyone's happy. And the thing about buyers as well is like, they're not able to close every single buyer. Like at the height of my career, I was closing every single buyer. In my best month in sales, I did around like 1.1 million in a single month. And the package that we were selling was a $9,800 package. If you do the math on that, like how many deals do you have to close in a single month to get to that stage? But I was closing every single buyer that was booking on my calendar, and every single tire kicker was getting treated accordingly. Once you're able to get on calls, feel someone out, recognize patterns, understand different social cues, identify weak language, and just be 3 steps ahead of the prospect that you're speaking to, that's when you're gonna be able to basically take your career to the next level. But what a lot of you do is you're relying on a script, and the script that you're relying on is really made for like the ideal person to pay. Sometimes the conversation is gonna go off track and you're not gonna know what to say. The only skill you have is memorizing a script or reading off a script. Once you actually understand sales in terms of like what it actually is at its core, and once you understand like people and different avatars and how people think and just understanding how to think on calls, like you're gonna get to a stage where your commissions are simply gonna 10x. And that leads me to the next point of objections, okay? Objection handling is a really funny term in my opinion, because what a lot of you do is you like to handle objections for what they are. Whenever I get on a call and somebody gives me an objection, like I always know in the back of my head, whatever they're saying is a smokescreen. There is a real root reason as to why they don't want to move forward, and they're just saying I need to think about it, I need to speak to my partner, just to kind of get off the call as soon as they can. Typically in sales, there's really 2 real objections, money and fear. Every real objection is just around money and fear, okay? And sometimes you'll have actual objections, like genuine objections, logistical objections, like actual real objections, which, you have to know when that is so that you can actually follow up accordingly. The last part of an actual sales call obviously is objection handling. This is where the frame of like being a human lie detector comes back in the picture, right? What a lot of salespeople do is, and this is like a very costly mistake also, every time you get an objection on a sales call, it is never the truth. It's a smoke screen, okay? And what a lot of you do is you handle smoke screens rather than handling actual reality. To handle reality, it goes back to like the mental vault. When I know somebody's fully bullshitting, it's because I have my mental vault and I've been able to like store things in my brain of what they said on the call that just does not align with what they're saying right now. For example, if somebody, starts touching on a little bit about like, being burned in the past or doing something before it didn't work out, or just they have a lot of, inabilities in themselves and their mindset's wrong, you're gonna know that this person is not moving forward because they're fearful and they've somewhat done things in the past and hasn't worked out and they have limiting beliefs. And when you're able to basically collect data on calls and put it in your brain, and at the end of the call, come to your own sort of conclusion as to why this person doesn't want to move forward. Whenever somebody tells you something, like what you need to do is just acknowledge it for face value and then get to the real truth straight away. The most simple way you can actually do that is just, firstly, you want to get the tie downs. John, you can go think about it, man. No worries at all. Like, do you see the value in what we're doing? Yes or no? Yes? Okay, fantastic. Are you fully committed to getting the XYZ outcome that you're looking for? Yes or no? Yes. If those 2 things align, that's the gateway that opens for me to go for the truth. But once you're able to get to the truth, and once you're able to like get somebody to basically self-confess what's holding them back, that's when you have the most leverage, and that's when you should be closing someone. right? When you have the real reason as to why they don't want to move forward. And it's pretty simple to get there, but a lot of you want to overcomplicate it with word tracks, frameworks, and you're not addressing the elephant in the room, okay? Once you get to the truth as fast as possible on a sales call towards the end, that is when you'll be able to close the most amount of deals. It's that simple. Most people get on calls and lie. It's a fact, right? I can't say it's a fact, but 99.9% of people do, right? And it's up to you to get to that reality as fast as possible and handle it and get them over the line. It's pretty simple. And stop overcomplicating objections. It's not complicated. It's just, you just need to know a few different reframes, and you need to sound pretty confident when you're speaking and speak with conviction, and people will buy into that. At the end of the day, like the way you need to think about sales, it is a fundamental skill, and the most skilled will make the most amount of money. Now, if you're not very skilled, like you have no leverage as a salesperson, because the biggest leverage that you have as a salesperson is being able to close people that other people can't close. That's what allowed me to stay on the most competitive team for 2 years, be top closer every single month, is I was closing deals consistently that people could not close just because of the way I handled calls and the way I was, like my style, very different to other people. Once you're able to get to the stage where you're closing every single buyer that gets on your calendar, like that's when you get to the next stage in your career. That's when you break through that ceiling. But a lot of you can't, because you can't close every buyer. You're closing every laydown, right? If you're just an order taker closing every laydown, really reevaluate what you want out of sales. Because the reality of it is you're easily replaceable and you lack skills. Okay, so no matter what offer you get on, they can replace you like that in the sound of fingers. So once you're able to get to a stage where you can close every buyer, that's when you can break through that ceiling. At the end, guys, all sales really is, it's just about getting to the truth and not trying to force an outcome or convince people or persuade people. It's just about getting to the reality as soon as possible and as efficiently as possible. And when you close somebody, it's the result of doing everything correctly. It's the result of actually having clean intentions on a call, right? And not caring about any sort of outcome. Most objections you get are simply just smoke screens. And the reason why you can't handle objections is because you're handling the smoke screen. You can't actually handle the real objection. And at the end of the day, when you get to a stage where you're like closing deals left, right, center, like the detachment that you want naturally is a byproduct, because you're in flow state, right? And when you get to that stage where you're in flow state, closing deals left, right, center, like that is the best place to be as a sales rep. And obviously there's gonna be times in your career as a sales rep where you're not gonna be closing deals, and that's a given. But just knowing that and being aware of that and being prepared for that is gonna be the thing that's gonna take you to the stage where you are making a bunch of money and you're racketing commissions left, right, center. I did not learn this overnight. I believe that I was talented, I had a gift, but I had to harness that gift, and me getting to the stage where I got to was a byproduct of extreme amount of work ethic and just grinding. A lot of people want to sell you the dream that you can take like 3 calls a day and make 20K a month. Very rare. And the people who do that are like on some sort of fucking unicorn offer. It's so linear to get to a stage you're making $20,000, $30,000 a month in commissions. And I know that's, for a lot of you, that's the pinnacle of sales, or that's the pinnacle for you. Yeah, just understanding what sales actually is to its core, and unlearning all the bad habits that you've learned, most of you have learned in your sales careers, is going to take you leaps and bounds. But yeah, guys, I hope you found this video valuable and enjoyable, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.